India and the United Kingdom today signed a free trade agreement in what is considered to be a strong political message by both governments for very different reasons. For India, the deal aims to signal that New Delhi is open for business and welcomes foreign goods to its markets. India has long been looked at as a market with potential. However, its high tariff regime has deterred foreign businesses. The trade agreement is its first bilateral deal with a Western nation and is set to send a message that this is not the case anymore. India did sign a trade deal with the European Free Trade Association, or the EFTA, last year. However, that is a regional grouping that includes Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. A number of leaders, the most famous of them being US President Donald Trump, have long called India the tariff king, given the high barriers of entry for foreign businesses and exports to the South Asian nation. However, this FTA aims to point out otherwise, given that New Delhi will be cutting tariffs on British automobile exports from 100% to 10%. India's tariffs on automobiles, spirits and liquor, and agricultural products have long been flashpoints for previous negotiations. However, with the cut in tariff on British automobile exports, albeit with the introduction of import quotas, the idea is to show New Delhi's openness in this area. Similarly, tariffs on British whiskey and gin will be halved by New Delhi from 150% to 75%, and within a decade will be further reduced to 40%. British financial services firms are set to be given equal footing to domestic companies, while its renewable energy companies will now have access to India's vast procurement network. In exchange for these concessions, the UK is set to eliminate tariffs on Indian goods in a number of areas, including agriculture, textiles, plastics, marine products, chemicals, and engineering goods. The agreement is expected to increase bilateral trade between the two countries by around $33 billion annually, according to data published by London. The deal is considered by the UK as India's most comprehensive ever, while the most significant bilateral trade deal for London since it exited the European Union. The deal is set to see the elimination of roughly 99% of duties covering 100% of trade value for Indian exporters to the United Kingdom. The two countries are also set to sign a double contribution convention that will see temporary Indian workers in the UK and Indian employers exempt from social security contributions for 3 years. This convention will see Indian employees save nearly 20% and roughly 4,000 crore in gains for Indian employers. The British Parliament will have to ratify the document before its businesses can avail of the new tariff regime in its exports to India. For Indian exporters, duties imposed by the UK have been reduced to zero from previously high levels of up to 20% on marine products, 12% on textiles and clothing, 8% on chemicals, and 10% on base metals. It should be noted that in the processed food sector, British duties on 99.7% of tariff lines have been slashed from roughly 70% in some cases to zero. For India's agricultural sector, the trade deal is set to put in place certain protections which will ensure that technical barriers to trade and sanitary and phytosanitary measures would not lead to unjustified trade restrictions. Staples produced in India such as turmeric, pepper, cardamom, and processed goods like mango pulp, pickles, and pulses will enjoy duty-free access to British markets. Grapes, bakery goods, preserved vegetables, fresh and chilled vegetables, sauces, and processed foods are some of the other products where Indian exporters are expected to gain advantage over their international competitors with regards to access to the British market. India has given no tariff concessions to UK producers in the sectors of edible oils, dairy, and apple and oats. These sectors are considered to be sensitive by New Delhi. Indian shrimp, tuna, fish meal, and feeds, which currently face duties of anywhere from 4.2% to 8.5%, will become completely duty-free through this trade deal. Indian textiles have faced steep competition from Bangladeshi, Pakistani, and Cambodian exports to the UK. The textile exports from these three countries have faced duty-free access to British markets, while in some cases, Indian products have faced barriers of up to 12% of tariffs. These are some of the likely gains for Indian exporters. That is all from me. For more such news and analysis, subscribe below.